let's dive into something that I think is on everyone's minds these days, right? Privacy.
Definitely a hot topic.
It really is. And, especially with blockchain technology kind of, looming large on the horizon. So we're going to be looking at excerpts today from the audiobook Unchained Privacy, Blockchain, Security, and the Fight for Civil Liberties.
A great choice. It really gets into the heart of this whole privacy issue. I mean, you think about it, and it feels like every day we hear about a new data breach or some government agency spying on people.
It's kind of creepy, honestly. Like, I want to use all the cool technology and everything, but I also want to, keep my own life private.
It's that classic dilemma. We want the benefits of technology, but not at the cost of our privacy. And the book really makes you think about this. It brings up examples of how things can go wrong. Like, think about those huge data breaches we've seen. Millions of people's information just out there.
Yeah, that's scary. And it's not just about, like, hiding secrets, right? It's about feeling safe and in control of your own life.
Exactly. And the book brings up this point about how a lack of privacy can actually stifle free speech. Like, if you're constantly worried about being watched, you're less likely to speak your mind, even if you live in a democracy.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
It's a chilling effect. And so this is where blockchain comes in. The book really presents it as a potential solution, a way to fight back against this erosion of privacy.
Okay, so let's talk about blockchain. I mean, it's a buzzword everyone throws around, but can we break it down a bit? Yeah. What is it, and why is it so important for privacy?
Sure. So at its core, blockchain is all about decentralization. Instead of having one central authority controlling all the data, it's spread across a huge network of computers.
So it's not like Facebook or Google having all our data in one place.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And every transaction or piece of data added to a blockchain is secured using cryptography, which makes it extremely difficult to tamper with. Plus, once something's on the blockchain, it's there forever. It's a permanent, tamper-proof record.
Okay, so it's secure and transparent. I get that. But how does that translate into real privacy benefits for people? Like me sitting here using my phone.
Well, let's take an example. Imagine you're applying for a job.
Yeah.
Right now, you basically have to hand over your entire online history to a potential employer. With blockchain, you could have what's called a self-sovereign identity. You control what information you share and with whom.
So I could just choose to give them, like, my work experience and education and not my entire social media history.
Exactly. You're in control. And this idea of control extends to other areas, too. The book talks a lot about financial privacy and how blockchain can help with that.
Yeah, I've heard about privacy-focused cryptocurrencies.
Right, like Monero or Zcash. They use cryptography to obscure transaction trails, giving you more anonymity.
So why is financial privacy so important?
Well, think about vulnerable groups, like refugees who might need to move money across borders without being tracked, or people living under oppressive regimes where financial transactions are monitored.
I see. It's like a shield against surveillance. So, okay, blockchain sounds pretty cool, but the book also mentions this thing called zero-knowledge proofs. What the heck is that?
It's a bit of a mind bender, but basically, it's a way to prove something without revealing the underlying information.
Okay, that sounds complicated.
It is, but think of it this way. You could prove you're old enough to buy alcohol without showing your ID or even revealing your birth date.
Oh, wow. Okay, I get it. So you're basically saying, trust me, I meet the requirements without giving up any personal details. That's pretty neat.
Exactly. It's a pretty powerful concept with huge implications for things like online voting, medical records, anything where you need to prove something without sacrificing privacy.
So blockchain seems like it has a lot of potential for, like, taking back control of our data, right? But it can't all be sunshine and roses. What are some of the potential downsides?
You're right, no technology is perfect. And one of the biggest concerns raised in the book is this, the rise of AI-powered surveillance. And they use a pretty stark example to illustrate this. What's happening in Xinjiang, China.
Oh, right. I've heard about the surveillance there, but how does that connect to blockchain and privacy?
Well, what's happening in Xinjiang is like a worst-case scenario. Facial recognition, phone monitoring, constant data analysis, all being used to track and control the Uyghur population.
Yeah, that sounds really dystopian, like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It is. And the book makes the point that this isn't just a problem in China. The technology for this kind of surveillance is being exported all over the world.
So it's like, even in democracies, we need to be careful about how this technology gets used.
Absolutely. It's a global concern. It's not just about authoritarian regimes.
Mm.
Even democratic governments are grappling with how to balance security with individual rights.
Right, because we need security, but we don't want to end up living in a surveillance state.
It's a tough balance. And it brings us back to blockchain. Can it be a force for good, or can it be used for bad things?
It's a big question. And that's what makes this whole discussion so fascinating, right? We're exploring this technology that has the potential to empower individuals, but also, maybe some risks too.
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure.
Feels like we're at a crossroads, trying to figure out which path to take. And the choices we make today are going to have a huge impact on the future of privacy, on our freedom. It's kind of a lot to think about, honestly.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, but that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah,
To dive deep into these issues.
exactly. So let's keep going. I want to hear more about these risks and also how we can, navigate this whole situation in a way that protects our privacy but also doesn't stifle innovation.
All right, let's get into it. Picking up where we left off, we were talking about how blockchain has, well, two sides to it. Like that thing about privacy coins offering anonymity.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool, but could it also be used for, not so great stuff like money laundering and all that?
Yeah. Exactly. And the book doesn't sugarcoat it. It acknowledges that tension. The same features that make it great for privacy can be exploited. It's like, how do you stop someone from using a privacy coin for, let's say, tax evasion, while also protecting the legitimate need for privacy?
It's tricky, right? I mean, how do you draw that line?
Yeah, it's a real dilemma. And governments are wrestling with this too. We're seeing this regulatory backlash. Authorities are trying to find that balance, trying to prevent criminal activity, but also respect individual privacy rights.
So it's like a tug of war between wanting to use this cool new technology for good and then also trying to prevent the bad stuff. It makes you wonder if, are we just heading towards a future where privacy is constantly under threat no matter what?
It's a valid concern. And the book doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it does emphasize this individual action. We can't just sit back and wait for governments or tech companies to figure it out.
So what can we do?
We need to educate ourselves, learn about blockchain, understand its potential, but also its risks, and then advocate, demand responsible development, support policies that protect our digital freedoms.
So it's like we need to be informed citizens in this digital age, right? Not just passively consume technology that actually shape how it evolves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this ties into a bigger theme from the book. The future of privacy isn't preordained. We're building it right now through the choices we make.
So every decision matters, whether it's demanding more transparency from companies or, supporting those groups fighting for privacy rights.
Absolutely. And speaking of what we should be striving for, the book does paint a picture of a more privacy-conscious world.
What does that look like?
Imagine a world where privacy isn't a luxury. It's a fundamental right. Individuals have real ownership and control over their own data, and technology empowers people instead of being used to control them.
Okay, I like that. That's a future worth fighting for. But I imagine it's going to be, a tough road to get there, right?
Absolutely. It won't be easy. It requires big systemic changes, a shift in how we think about data, about privacy, and it'll take time.
One thing that I keep coming back to is this. Can we really have both? Can we have privacy and security in this digital age?
That's the million-dollar question. Honestly, the book doesn't offer a simple solution. It suggests that, finding that balance requires a nuanced approach, recognizing that security is important, but so are individual freedoms.
So no easy answers?
Not really, but at least we're starting to ask the right questions. Hey, can we switch gears for a bit? I want to talk about something the book brought up that I thought was super interesting. Financial inclusion.
Okay, yeah. How does that connect to all this?
This is where blockchain's potential for good really shines, I think. Think about it. It could completely change access to financial services for people who've been excluded. The millions who don't have bank accounts, can't get loans, can't really participate in the global economy.
That's a huge issue, and it's not something we always talk about. So blockchain can help with this.
Exactly. With these decentralized networks, with cryptocurrency, people can securely store their money, make transactions, participate in the global marketplace, all without needing traditional banks.
So it's like you're cutting out the middleman, giving people direct control over their own finances.
Exactly. Empowering, right? Especially for those who are, marginalized or living in poverty. The book really lays out the possibilities.
I bet there are challenges too, though, right? Like
Oh.
teaching people how to use these new systems.
Of course, it's not just about the technology. It's also about education, infrastructure, addressing social and cultural barriers.
So it's going to take everyone working together to make it happen.
Exactly. It's a team effort. Governments, NGOs, tech companies, everyone needs to be on board. But even with those challenges, the potential impact is huge. I mean, financial inclusion is crucial for a more just and equitable world. And blockchain could be a game changer.
It's another reminder that, like, this technology isn't just about the tech itself. It's about people, empowering people. And speaking of empowerment, can we talk about identity management?
Yes. This is another area where blockchain's decentralized nature really shines. Right now, our identities are like scatter all over the place. Banks, social media, government agencies. It's a mess, and it leaves us vulnerable. Blockchain offers this different approach, a self-sovereign digital identity.
So, like, instead of having bits and pieces of me everywhere, I could have this one central, secure place that I control.
Exactly. And you choose what information to share with different people or organizations. It's already happening too. Projects are underway exploring blockchain-based identity systems.
So how would that work?
Basically, your identity is stored on a blockchain. It's super secure because of cryptography. And you have a private key, like a password, that gives you access. You decide what information to share, when, and with whom.
It's like having a digital passport that I control. That's way better than the current system where we just hand over our information all the time without really knowing what happens to it.
Exactly. And the book highlights how important this could be for refugees. People who have been displaced and might not have proper documentation. Blockchain-based identity could give them a secure, verifiable way to prove who they are, access services, rebuild their lives.
That's a really powerful example. It shows how this tech can really be a force for good, help those who need it most.
Absolutely. It's all about using technology to create a more just and equitable world. But there are still some hurdles to get over, of course.
Like what?
Well, how do you make sure these systems are secure? How do you make them easy for everyone to use, even those who aren't, tech savvy? And how do you prevent misuse by governments or corporations?
Right.
Those are important questions, and we need to find solutions as these technologies develop. But even with those challenges, the potential benefits are huge. It's a path worth exploring.
For sure. It's about striking that balance between innovation and responsibility, right?
Yeah, I think so. We need to be cautious, but also optimistic about what's possible.
Well, this has been quite the deep dive. We've gone from the power of blockchain to, like, the scary reality of AI surveillance to all these ethical questions about tech and, most importantly, what we can actually do to protect ourselves.
It's been a journey, a lot to think about. And I hope our listeners are feeling, ready to keep exploring this topic.
Yeah.
Because it's always evolving.
Before we finish up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought that really stuck with me from the book. The fight for digital privacy, it's not just about technology, it's about our humanity.
It's about our basic rights, our freedom to think, to speak, to live our lives without being constantly monitored.
Exactly. So remember, your privacy matters. Be mindful, be proactive, and don't be afraid to speak up for your rights. Because ultimately, the future of privacy is in our hands.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for having this conversation.
Thanks for being here. Until next time, everyone, stay curious and stay empowered. So we've talked about all these big ideas, these huge challenges around privacy in this digital age, but it's easy to feel like, well, what can I actually do? Like, I'm just one person.
It's true. It can feel overwhelming. But the book makes a good point. We're not totally powerless. There are things we can do to take back some control,
Okay, so let's get practical. What are some things people can actually do?
The first thing, and it sounds simple, but it's huge. Be mindful of what you share online. Think before you post.
Like on social media.
Especially on social media, yeah. We share so much without even thinking about it. Photos, our thoughts, even our location sometimes.
It's true. It's easy to get caught up in the moment and just, like, share everything.
Exactly. And once it's out there, it's out there. It's not just social media either. Be careful about websites and apps that ask for too much information. Read those privacy policies, even though they're super long and boring.
Oh, I never read those. I just click agree.
I know, right? We all do it. But it's important to be aware of how our data is being used and what control we have or don't have.
Okay, so being mindful of what we share. What else?
Strengthen your online security. And I mean, like, the basics. Strong passwords, different for every account. Turn on two-factor authentication wherever you can, and keep your software updated.
That's good advice, but Honestly, I'm kind of bad at remembering to do all that.
I know, it's easy to forget, but think of it like locking your doors at home. You don't want to make it easy for someone to, you know, get in.
That's a good analogy. So, strong passwords, two-factor authentication, anything else?
If you really want to be secure, consider using a VPN, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi.
A VPN, yeah. That encrypts your internet traffic,
It's
right?
exactly. It's like creating a secure tunnel for your data so no one can snoop on you.
I like that. A secret tunnel.
And speaking of encryption, make sure you're using encrypted messaging apps whenever you can, like Signal or WhatsApp.
Those are good, right?
Yeah. They offer end-to-end encryption. So only you and the person you're talking to can read the messages. Not even the app companies can see them.
Wow, that's good to know. Okay, so we've talked about stuff we can do ourselves. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the big picture stuff. We need to support those organizations that are fighting for our privacy rights.
Like who?
Groups like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Center for Democracy and Technology, they're doing amazing work, challenging government surveillance,
Yeah.
pushing back against these big tech companies that want to collect all our data. They're advocating for policies that protect our digital freedoms.
It's good to know there are people out there, fighting the good fight. Honestly, this whole conversation has been kind of a wake-up call for me, but I'm also feeling, I don't know, a little more hopeful now. Like there are things we can do. It's not hopeless.
That's the spirit. The future of privacy isn't set in stone. It's something we're creating right now with every choice we make.
This deep dive has been, well, a lot. Blockchain, AI, surveillance, all these ethical questions. But I think the most important takeaway for me, and hopefully for our listeners, is that we can do something. We have a role to play in all of this.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Before we wrap up, I want to share one last thought from the book that really stuck with me. This whole battle for digital privacy, it's not just about technology. It's a human fight.
It's about fundamental rights, the right to think freely, to speak freely, to live our lives without being constantly watched and judged.
It's about making sure technology serves us, not the other way around. Well said. So, as we go back to our digital lives, let's remember, privacy matters. Be mindful, be proactive, and speak up for your rights. Because the future of privacy, it's in our hands. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and stay empowered.